If you're a student, you already know the pressure of those three little letters, GPA. It's a number that can feel like it's the final judgment on your entire academic life. But what if it's not? What if you could take that number, and instead of it being a source of stress, you could turn it into your most powerful strategic tool? Let's figure out how. So let's start with the big question. Is your GPA just a number? The short answer? No way. It's the story of your academic journey so far. And in the next few minutes, we're going to learn how to read that story and, way more importantly, how you can start writing the next chapter yourself. Okay, so first, let's get the basics down. Your grade point average, or GPA, is really just a standardized score for how you're doing in your classes. It turns your grades into points and then averages them out. But here's the part a lot of people miss. It's weighted by credit hours. That means getting an A in a big 4-credit class is going to boost your GPA a whole lot more than getting an A in a 1-credit seminar. So what's a typical GPA? Well, the national average for college students is right around a 3.15. You can think of this as basically a B average, a solid, decent performance. But as we're about to see, in today's competitive world, satisfactory is often just the beginning. The first major goalpost for a lot of students is a 3.5. Hitting this number or going higher is what really starts to open doors. We're talking competitive scholarships, honor societies, and those top-tier internships. It's the signal to everyone that you're performing well above average. And for some of the most competitive paths out there, the bar gets even higher. Take a look at this number, 3.79. That's the average GPA of a student who actually gets accepted into medical school. It just goes to show you that for certain careers, your GPA isn't just a metric, it's pretty much a non-negotiable part of your ticket to get in. But here's where things get a little more interesting. See, not all GPAs are calculated the same way. In fact, your transcript can tell two totally different versions of your academic story, depending on whether it's weighted or unweighted. So the most common one is the unweighted GPA. That's the classic 4.0 scale you always hear about. An A is a 4.0, a B is a 3.0. And it doesn't matter if the class was easy or hard, it's a pure measure of your performance. But a lot of schools also use a weighted GPA. And this system gives you bonus points for taking tougher classes like honors or AP. It's all about rewarding academic rigor. And here's exactly how that weighting works. An A in a normal class, that's a 4.0. But get that same A in an honors class, and it might become a 4.5. And in an even tougher AP course, it could be a 5.0. This system is precisely how you hear about students graduating with a GPA above a 4.0. It sends a clear signal that they didn't just get good grades, they earned them in the hardest courses their school had to offer. Now, your GPA has real consequences that go way beyond just applications for jobs or more school. While you're actually in school, it directly determines something called your official academic standing. Most schools have a system that looks something like this. If your GPA is a 2.0 or higher, you're usually in good standing, which means everything is normal. But if it drops below that, you might get an academic warning. And if it falls even further, you could be placed on academic probation, which often comes with some restricted privileges and mandatory meetings with advisors. And that label carries a heavy, heavy emotional weight. One survey found that 93% of students felt scared by the phrase academic probation. It's so intimidating that a lot of schools are now shifting to more supportive language like academic notice, trying to encourage students to recover instead of just scaring them. If you really want to understand the high stakes for admissions, just look at this data for medical school. With a GPA up there between a 3.8 and a 4.0, your acceptance rate is a really strong 79%. But if that GPA drops down into the 3.0 to 3.19 range, well, the acceptance rate just falls off a cliff, all the way down to 6%. The data is crystal clear. Your GPA can absolutely be the deciding factor. So, what happens if you find yourself in that tough spot? The most important thing to know is that there is always a path to recovery. It all starts with a clear, simple plan. Step 1, go see your academic advisor, like immediately. Then be honest with yourself and figure out the root causes. Next, use the support services on campus. And finally, create a realistic course plan to get yourself back on track. All right, now let's talk strategy, not just for recovering, but for really excelling. I'm going to say something that might surprise you, but it is a total game changer. You're probably using office hours wrong. See, most students only go to office hours when they're already in trouble. But the top students, they know better. Using office hours strategically isn't about desperation. It's all about preparation. You go early in the semester just to build a relationship. You pop in to clarify expectations before an assignment is even due. You bring in a rough draft to get feedback. When you do this, you transform your professor from just being a grader into being your ally. Let's run through a few more pro-level tips real quick. First, be strategic with your courses. Don't pile on a bunch of super hard classes in one semester. Balance is everything. Second, know the rules of the game. A lot of schools have a grade forgiveness policy that lets you retake a class to replace a bad grade. And finally, rethink how you study. Ditching passive stuff like highlighting for active learning, like trying to teach the material to someone else, is proven to lock in knowledge way more effectively. Okay, after all this talk about numbers, it is so important that we zoom out for a second. Please remember this. Your GPA is an important metric, yes, but it is not a complete one. It says absolutely nothing about your creativity, your leadership skills, your resilience, or the 100 other qualities that truly define who you are as a person. And that really brings us to the main takeaway here. Your GPA isn't some static brand on your forehead. It's a dynamic tool, a number that you have control over. Once you understand how it works, you can use it to tell a story of challenge, of growth, and of achievement. Ultimately, your GPA is just one chapter in your much, much larger story. The numbers you have right now, that's just the beginning of the sentence. The real question is, what are you going to write next?